Luffy vs Kizaru is about to start in the One Piece anime and is considered one of the most controversial fights of recent time, people continuing to fight about which one is stronger, the endless clashing of the admirals versus yonkos in power scaling. Therefore, here is everything you need to know before some changes likely occur in the anime version of the story. So at this point, Luffy is recognized as a yonko and Kizaru still an admiral, titles that result in our first issue. When it comes to One Piece power scaling, people need to try and remove the perceived strength associated with the title. All the Yonko are not equal in power, likewise with the admirals. Therefore, it's better to consider the top tier characters in the One Piece world on an individual level rather than in groups. How strong is Luffy as a character at this point in the story? Likewise for Kizaru, with this also being Luffy's first real test as a Yonko in the story, the perfect way to highlight his power progression. Therefore, to set up the battle, the second Kizaru arrived and clashed with Sentomaru, Luffy outright says, "Someone really strong is coming," highlighting the perceived threat compared to previously in the arc, and us learning about Kizaru's past with Vegapunk and Sentomaru, a very important factor to keep in mind moving forward. Therefore, as this fight continues and ends with not much trouble for the Admiral, his top priority of eliminating Vegapunk is revealed. Of course, this is alongside being the escort of Saturn, the main villain of Egghead, but this brings us to the start of his fight with Luffy, something that's all over the place, but I'll go in the order of the story, with a clash and the outright claim that we're 100 times stronger than we were 2 years ago by Luffy. Of course, when they stood no chance as an entire crew against this monster, and should have been destroyed if Rayleigh wasn't there. Someone who remains as a monster in the story to this day as recently shown, giving Kizaru more stocks on reflection to be honest, but as it continues we see Luffy and Snake Man pressuring the Admiral, making him actually say, "You certainly are the man who defeated Kaido, you're formidable." Additionally, back during the Wano days, Kizaru was willing to pull up if Akainu let him. The purpose in the context of this moment was to stop the meeting of two Yonkos, likely pulling up on Big Mom potentially who was making her move. But back of the fight, we see Kizaru unleash an attack while claiming acceleration is power, pretty much the torque coming from his insane speed resulting in more outright power, and sends Luffy flying with a kick, taking the chance to find Vegapunk, something he does in an instant, and prepare to end him, but makes it incredibly clear that this is a tough mission for him, highlighting how conflicted the Admiral is here. Then Luffy catches him with Gear 5, visually leaving him shocked or even worried, leading into the typical insanity of current Luffy and Kizaru being thrown away, almost falling in the sea, but returning to go on the offensive, where Luffy seemingly is coming out on top all things considered, but was getting baited by Kizaru's clones here, who's focusing on his mission still and required Luffy to jump in front of his blast to save the Doctor, highlighting how both are focusing on many things outside of just a pure clash to see who was stronger, with them even saying so right here. But then when Kizaru went for another attack on Vegapunk, potentially underestimating the Straw Hat here, Luffy was able to take the advantage, dodging his attack and landing this crazy blow directly, something that was successful and removed Kizaru from the current fight, but also showed Luffy hitting his limit as well, and both of them not being able to move at all, meaning at this point the fight is pretty much a draw, showcasing the limitations of current Luffy and potentially the insane durability of the Admirals, pure workhorses in battles like they demonstrated many other times, with Kizaru returning to the battle first and making it clear that they should finish their mission right away. That is his only focus and what he cares about, and reconfirming his conflicted nature with needing to take out Vegapunk, but again was delayed by the other Straw Hats, while the likes of Saturn managed to land on the Doctor, then Kizaru trying to take out Kuma and Bonnie right before Luffy returned and saved them in Gear 5 still, sending Kizaru away, who was shown pretty much to be over this shit. Now Luffy spends some time beating up Saturn, while Kizaru is then stopped by Sanji this time. Bro really doesn't want to be here at this point, realizing that the world government likely wants him to take out Luffy and the others potentially, and faces down both Straw Hats while Saturn is seemingly in the dirt, but returns shortly enraged, giving Kizaru the opportunity to complete the main mission by knocking Sanji away and landing another attack on the already dying Vegapunk, potentially highlighting the conclusion of his purpose in this arc. But the next moment is what has resulted in people viewing Luffy as much stronger. He manages to grab both the Elder and Admiral at the same time, where Kizaru is seemingly done here, treating them like toys and clapping both at the same time. This is where Kizaru is shown on his back once again, while Luffy is facing down something potentially even more dangerous. But the main point people make is that Luffy is still fighting while Kizaru is still down wanting to rest. Coincidentally, this is after completing his mission. Additionally, we see Luffy eating multiple times when his power is low. Coincidentally, one of them featured food appearing out of nowhere, connecting to a SBS revealed where Luffy was apparently given this food by Kizaru in this scene, at least from most people's perspective when reading what was stated here, highlighting again the conflicted nature of this entire fight and how neither side should be viewed as the winner, as this wasn't close to a 1v1 battle to the death by any means. Additionally, after all the insanity of this arc was over, which since Kizaru landed this blow on Vegapunk featured pretty much nothing from him, he was shown to seemingly be the only conscious marine close to the island, questioning Akainu if he ever had to kill his best friend, and raging out for questioning him potentially slacking off here. The conflicted nature of this mission was much more extreme than we could have expected and provided a very different perspective on Kizaru's actions throughout this entire arc. But with all this said, the entire battle between him and Luffy was all over the place. It wasn't just a few chapters, it was little moments from like 20 or so chapters all around the place. Therefore, when it comes to the upcoming anime version of the fight, it's very likely they're going to add much more and likely spend more dedicated time on the fight itself rather than all the other cutaways and various moments in between, meaning Luffy could be portrayed as much stronger in the anime, or maybe even Kizaru, all things considered. But as it stands, during this battle they should be viewed as around the same level, but leading into the future, Luffy being recognized as stronger is of course a guarantee, all things considered.